The New South Wales government is in turmoil tonight. Nationals leader and Deputy Premier John Barilaro has quit. His bombshell resignation follows the shock departure of Gladys Berejiklian just 3 days ago. The Liberals now face a potentially bruising vote tomorrow to decide the next Premier. As for John Barilaro, he says public life has taken a toll and it's time to go. Here's state political reporter Ashley Raper.
The times are uncertain and the government is increasingly unstable. After New South Wales lost its Premier, the Deputy Premier is now pulling the pin.
There is never a right time, but I know as the architect of the roadmap when we get to open up on Monday, I'm confident that this state now has bright days ahead of us.
John Barilaro has been the Deputy Premier and Nationals leader for the past 5 years. He's decided to quit politics altogether.
It has taken a toll. It is tough on anybody in public life to continue in this role, especially under so much scrutiny.
The 49-year-old has been a divisive political figure that at times went rogue. His confrontational style led to a fractious relationship with his coalition partners and almost tore the government apart over koalas.
What was over policy over koalas ended up being a more difficult conversation, a difficult debate that got out of control, and you know, one of my regrets is that we didn't steer that through in a different way.
The man expected to be the next Premier tried to convince his friend and colleague to stay.
A very disappointing day today. John has been a stalwart for rural and regional New South Wales. He's a fighter.
Dominic Perrottet still has a fight on his hands as he attempts to take the top job. Despite factional bosses striking a deal yesterday to shore up his numbers, the other contender, Rob Stokes, is digging in.
I think there could be nothing more appropriate than leaving the choice in the hands of the members of the Parliament who represent the people of New South Wales. I don't think it's appropriate to leave the choice to factional heavyweights.
It means the election of a new leader will go to a secret ballot, and Rob Stokes delivered his pitch to his party for change.
If I'm Premier, I'm committed to significantly increasing representation of women in the senior ranks of the New South Wales Ministry.
While Dominic Perrottet hasn't ruled out speeding up the COVID roadmap.
If I'm successful in that ballot, then I will obviously sit down with the health officials and we'll work through that.
What's transpired within the government over the past 4 days has been nothing short of chaotic. There have now been 3 exits, from Gladys Berejiklian, Andrew Constance and John Barilaro, which means 3 by-elections. So the government, under a new leader, will be tested almost immediately at the polls. And John Barilaro's seat will be the hardest to retain.
John Barilaro's got an 11.6% margin, but he's hugely personally popular and they will lose that personal vote. It's a seat Labor has held many times.
More bad news for a government already in the minority. Ashley Raper, ABC News, Sydney.
Ashley Raper is with me now. Ashley, as you just said, it seems Macquarie Street is in chaos. Did anyone see Mr Barilaro's resignation coming?
Juanita, certainly the timing is a shock. John Barilaro had previously indicated that at some stage he may make the switch to federal politics, and there had been speculation that he may not run again at the next state election. But to bow out at this time is surprising because it's damaging to the government, and he was also the architect of the state's reopening plan, and you'd think he'd want to see that through. He insists, though, that he's worn out and it's time for renewal. Water Minister Melinda Pavey has declared that she would like to be the new Nationals leader, and the Deputy leader, Paul Toole, is also likely to want the job.
So tomorrow the Liberals vote on a new Premier. Most of the talk so far has been about Dominic Perrottet. Is it a foregone conclusion that he's going to win?
Things haven't quite gone to plan for Dominic Perrottet after the Treasurer, who's from the party's right, secured a deal with the power brokers of the moderate faction, which is the dominant faction, yesterday. He thought it was done, that his leadership was secured, and there was an expectation that the other contender, Rob Stokes, would pull out. Now, that hasn't happened, and certainly Dominic Perrottet is still the front runner and ahead in the numbers, but there is support for Rob Stokes, and some Liberals are very angry about the deal that was struck. So, Juanita, it will now go to a vote, a secret vote in the party room tomorrow, and Dominic Perrottet will have to work that much harder to shore up the votes if he is to be the next Premier of New South Wales.
Ashley Raper reporting there. Well, if he wins the party room ballot tomorrow, Dominic Perrottet would become the state's youngest Premier at just 39 years old. As Treasurer, he helped steer the state's economy through the pandemic. But the outspoken right-wing warrior has also attracted plenty of controversy over the years, and his opponents will be hoping to use that against him.
A father of 6 and a devout Catholic, Dominic Perrottet is known as someone who is quick with a quip.
The problem with the Labor Party is their B team is better than their A team, Mr Deputy Speaker.
Not afraid to stick his neck out on thorny economic issues like his proposal to abolish stamp duty. But he also oversaw the scandal-plagued iCare state insurance scheme, which underpaid thousands of sick and injured workers.
Could I have handled those that issue better at the time? Certainly.
The new member for Castle Hill, Dominic Perrottet.
And since entering Parliament in 2011, he's made plenty of controversial comments in his role as a spear carrier for the religious right.
Dominic Perrottet is a man who voted against the decriminalisation of abortion in New South Wales, campaigned against same-sex marriage, and was jubilant with the election of Donald Trump, walking into the chamber celebrating.
In relation to abortion, those issues, well, faith is important to me. People are entitled to their views.
Some commentators believe those strong religious views will be a turn-off for many voters.
It is a problem. It is a problem for women, LGBTQI people, and anyone of a different faith. So I'm concerned. I think a lot of women will be.
Faith and politics are likely to collide again soon for Dominic Perrottet, with a bill to legalise voluntary assisted dying due before Parliament this month. He's committed today to advocating for Liberal MPs to get a conscience vote.
My personal view on any of those issues has always been, just in the John Howard tradition, that we provide for conscience votes on those matters.
Mr Perrottet will need to keep the crossbench happy to maintain rule in minority government.
We'll continue to work with whomever is the Premier to support stable and good government.
And the opposition will need to capitalise on any weaknesses.
We will take nothing for granted, and we will have to fight for every single vote we end up getting in March 2023.
It's a new fight in a new political landscape in New South Wales. Sarah Garethy, ABC News.
John Barilaro has been one of the most controversial players in the bear pit. From the koala wars that almost tore the coalition apart to his infamous claim that pork barrelling is what elections are for. Kelly Fuller looks back on his career.
He entered Parliament in 2011, narrowly taking the seat of Monero from Labor.
A campaign with integrity, a campaign with honesty and transparency.
In 2016, he took over the National Party leadership from Troy Grant and played rough and tough.
You guys are an effing disgrace. Every single one of you.
His brand of politics may not have won him fans in Sydney, but many in the bush felt he took up their battles.
Nobody's perfect, but I think John did a good job.
He brought the concerns of the regions into the Parliament, which tends to be the government for Sydney.
Including during the so-called koala wars, when he threatened to blow up the coalition to protect farmland.
That was one of our main concerns, that we would see a whole heap of new green tape brought in.
Perhaps a win for the coalition in terms of they're all better friends now, but still no good news for koalas.
But his colleagues loved his style.
He has truly shown that he was not afraid to stand up.
He oversaw the government's response to the drought, provided fierce support to the mining sector, helped in the bushfire recovery, the mice plague and the pandemic roadmap.
I actually tried hard to make sure that we together were able to find hope and light for this state.
The focus now turns to who will take his place. Water Minister Melinda Pavey has already put up her hand.
I'm a champion of the bush. I want to see New South Wales continue to thrive.
Other contenders, including Roads Minister Paul Toole and Agriculture Minister Adam Marshall, are expected to come forward.
I'd never discuss or canvass publicly matters to do with the party room, and I'm not going to start now.
The Nationals will conduct a secret ballot on Wednesday to decide their new leader. Kelly Fuller, ABC News.